Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Muskowski, and I'm from the National Student Attendance Engagement and Success Center. Welcome to today's session, Being an Intervention Champion. Please allow me to share some brief details about the session. Today's presenter is Paul Verstraete. Paul is a facilitator from Johns Hopkins University School of Education, working on early warning systems in New Mexico, Arizona, and Seattle. He also presents and leads efforts at TDS on creating and adapting data systems within the early warning systems. Today's session will last for approximately 45 minutes and is being recorded. We'd like to encourage everyone to use the chat function at the bottom right corner of your screen to submit questions or comments for Paul. Please be sure to select everyone from the drop-down box to ensure that your comments and questions are seen. You may submit your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll leave time at the end to address as many questions as we can. If we don't have time to get through all the questions, we will reply to all participants by email within the next 5 to 7 days. We have placed all participants on mute to avoid any background noise and are asking you to please not unmute yourself, but to use the chat function. After the question and answer portion of the session, there will be a very brief poll, and your participation in this poll is really important to us and helps us to prepare our presentations and ensure that we're giving the right content to you in a way that best suits your needs. We greatly appreciate your feedback to the poll questions. And now, before I hand the session over to Paul, I'm just going to share that there will be a reminder about upcoming webinars that are going to be held in November at the end of Paul's presentation, and there will also be a link for registration. The mission of the National Student Attendance Engagement and Success Center is to disseminate evidence-based practices and build and facilitate communities of practice to help students attend every day, be engaged in school, and succeed academically so that they graduate high school prepared for college, career, and civic life. And now we'll hear from Paul, being an intervention champion.
All right, thanks, Linda. I want to welcome everyone today to my presentation. I'm going to be focusing on what it takes to be the actual doer of an intervention. The early warning system is based off of finding out who to intervene with, designing great interventions to support those students. Today I'm going to focus on, once you've determined who and once you have determined what you're going to do, what it means to actually be the person who is doing those interventions or shepherding those interventions at the school, which I find to be one of the most important parts of this entire process. And so I am going to start out with a brief review of what I mean when I say who we're going to support. And I just want to take a side note and say, when I originally submitted my slides for this presentation, I had written who, and when it came back to me, that my grammar was checked to whom. So just at the Department of Education, I want to thank you for checking that for me, and a little shout out to them for how detailed they are going through these slides. But anyway, so whom to support? How do we decide who it is that we want to provide those extra supports? And as we've been saying on almost every single webinar, every single session so far, we're talking about the ABCs. We're talking about attendance, we're talking about behavior, and we're talking about course performance. Those very basic things that we all know determine a person's level of engagement. I can tell just by the fact that our participants on this session, that you showed up, that you are at that first level of engagement to this webinar. And the same thing for our students. If they're showing up, they are more engaged than those who aren't showing up. And so that's why attendance becomes a great determiner of engagement. And the same thing for behavior, if you are acting right. And by acting right, I mean understanding the social context in which you're in and being able to navigate it, how we all need to behave differently depending on where we are and who we're with. And so when I'm talking about behavior, that's what I mean by acting right. And when it comes to course performance, it's about doing the work. And so students who are showing up, who are acting right and who are doing the work are necessarily more engaged than those who are not. And the same thing is for the reverse of that. For those who are not showing up, not acting right, and not doing the work, they're not engaged, they are disengaged. And so one of the greatest tells, and we've probably seen this wonderful graph before, for who is going to be able to graduate, engagements and disengagements are great predictors of that. This wonderful and yet terribly scary slide shows those sixth graders who were having trouble in attendance, behavior, or their course performance in English and math, where they were from year to year. When they were supposed to be in 7th grade, those sixth graders that had these problems, were they able to make it to the next year into 7th grade? And we see that that line dropped. Those lines dropped dramatically between those 2 years because they didn't make it into 7th grade. They were held back. The same thing occurs between 9th and 10th grade. Those sixth graders who are having trouble in attendance, behavior, English, and math, they fell back as well between 9th and 10th grade. They were no longer on track. They were able to stay from 6th to 7th to 8th to 9th grade. But once they were in 10th grade, they weren't able to make it there. They were held back in 9th grade and didn't get the credit. And so when it comes to attendance, behavior, and course performance, that's how we determine whom to provide extra support to. And so, again, I'm a big fan of data. I spend a lot of my time working on data, working with data. I love a spreadsheet like no one else loves a spreadsheet. It's one of my favorite things when I get up in the morning. If I have a good spreadsheet to work on, I'm a happy man. But a spreadsheet is not going to be the thing that makes sure that our students graduate. It'll be a support for helping find the students who we need to provide that extra support, but that spreadsheet isn't going to get us there alone. Which then, on top of that, we need to add, how do we support them? And so, as we've been saying on all of these sessions as well, we're talking about tiered interventions. We're talking about, when we're talking about tiered interventions, I want to picture this as a typical classroom. So we have each of those figures, we have 32 of them, which is about the size of a classroom in high school, number of kids. And so if we're going to look at tiered interventions, what does tiered interventions look like in a classroom? So tier 1, we're talking about interventions that everyone in class gets. We're talking about our best practices as educators. We're talking about our attendance initiatives, about our campaigns for awareness on specific issues. We're talking about those things, or these competitions that we have for kids. So those are those tier 1 interventions. And we're also talking about tier 2, where we're grouping our students, or we're providing light touch individual supports, things like success mentors, or if we're grouping our students based on tutoring needs. And then finally, with tier 3, we're focusing on those individual high-need case management students. And so if we're thinking about tiered interventions for a typical classroom, this is what it might look like. And so we want to design interventions that meet the needs of this classroom. We want to design interventions in which we can case manage 5 students, where we can provide tiered interventions to 12 of them. We want to be able to provide whole school interventions to all of them. And so when we're talking about designing great interventions, we're talking about designing interventions that look like what our students need. And so that's how we support our students. So now we know who we need to support, and we know how we need to support. So now we need a supporter. And this is the most important part of the entire process. We need to be able to, the person that is working with the student, making sure that they know how to work with the students, making sure that we are matching the supporter to the right intervention. Just like with success mentoring, the best interventions are done when the best champion is found for that intervention. And so what we're going to talk about is what it means to be an intervention champion. So that's my little introduction to how early warning systems lead to this point of a champion, of a person that's going to be doing the intervention. And what a champion does is very different depending on what level of intervention they're providing. So if we're talking about tiered interventions, we're talking about a base of tier 1, those targeted tier 2, and those high need intensive tier 3 interventions. We're talking about And let's focus on behavior interventions just to make it even more focused. Only those interventions that are meant to support students who are having issues with behavior. We're talking about, at the very base of this, project management. We have interventions, initiatives going throughout the buildings that the champion is less focused on the individual student and more focused on how the intervention is going. Is it meeting the needs of our students? I'm doing some sort of data analysis. I'm checking in on the different project components. If there's a poster that should go up, did that poster go up? If there's tickets to a competition or a reward that we're handing out, were they handed out? If there were information that needed to go to the teachers about it, did I do that? So when we're talking about Tier 1 championing, we're talking a lot about project management. If we take the opposite end of that spectrum, where we're talking about that intensive one-on-one support, we're no longer talking about project management, we're talking about case management. I'm focusing on a specific individual student, and I'm trying to meet that student's needs. Find out what their issues are and focus on those issues to be able to support them. And also, I can't stress this enough, find out what their strengths are and being able to build those strengths and make sure that the things that those students are excited about and want to and see their future, making sure that I help them build a path towards those good things as I'm building a path away from those negative influences. And so if we're talking about that middle part, that targeted intervention part, we're talking about kind of a mix of both. We're talking about where we take a little bit of case management and a little bit of project management, and that's where we get our targeted supports, because we're talking about groups of students that need, where we need to form relationships and understand exactly what the issues are. And at the same time, we're talking about interventions that we've created to help those students. And so we're trying to build those relationships at the same time we're trying to provide specific types of interventions. So Tier 2 is very much that middle of the Venn diagram where it's a little bit of both. And I want to take this moment while we're we've got a kind of a basic understanding of what I mean by what it means to be a champion for each of those tiers, project management versus case management, or a little bit of both. I want to talk about this from the viewpoint of a typical student who is going into the school every day. And so that's what I have here, right in front of you, a typical student. Many people have been on my presentations in the past know that I tend to use a typical student who I call Bob, after the director of the Everyone Graduate Center, as kind of like a funny little joke for myself that I'm talking about Bob having all of these issues. And so today I thought I'd change it up a little bit, and my sample student is named after a colleague of mine, Felicia. So today I want to talk to you about Felicia and how we're going to make sure Felicia is able to get all the supports that she needs. So Felicia's coming into class, coming into school. What is it like for Felicia when we have all of these interventions around her? So we have ourselves, this first circle represents a Tier 1 intervention. Felicia walks into school one day, and it's the first couple of days of school, and on the walls everywhere she sees posters for the 20-day attendance challenge, where there's announcements all over that about making sure that kids show up every day for the first 20 days. And so for Felicia, what she sees are all of these awareness campaigns all around her. She sees these posters, announcements made over the intercom. She hears about rewards for students who are able to show up for the full 20 days, or for students who are able to show up for 5 days straight. So she missed a couple of days in the first couple of weeks of school, but she was able to show up for the last 10. So even though she had trouble those first couple of days, because she was able to show up those last 10, she gets a reward for that. So that's what Felicia sees on her end. On the other end, if I'm the champion of that intervention, I'm the one making sure that Felicia has a positive interaction with that intervention. I'm the one making sure that those posters are there for her to see, that the announcements are written. I'm the one making sure that rewards for those first 20 days are there for the student. I don't have a direct connection with Felicia for this intervention unless I'm seeing her at other parts of the school day. Maybe I'm her math teacher. But for the most part, as her intervention champion for this Tier 1 intervention, it's mostly about the intervention itself. She sees that and takes part in it. So we add to that another whole school intervention. At the same time this 20-day attendance challenge is going on, there's also a Caught You Doing Something Good challenge that's happening. There's a, so Felicia is in her third period class, and she is helping out a classmate with the work. And so her teacher comes over and hands her a ticket, in which she is able to turn that ticket in for a raffle. And the teacher, as she's handing her the ticket, is pretty much saying, hey, I saw that you were helping out your classmate. I just wanted to give you this for the raffle because you were doing something that we want all of our students here at our school to do. And so she was caught doing something good, and she's rewarded for it. Now again, if I'm the intervention champion for the Caught You Doing Something Good initiative, I'm not the one handing her the ticket. I'm the one making sure that all the teachers have those tickets. I'm the one making sure that there's posters up on the wall to announce why kids would be getting tickets. I'm the one making sure that when teachers are handing those tickets over, they know kind of what to say to kind of make the impact for that intervention. Again, my relationship with Felicia is not direct, it's through the intervention. And the same thing if we have a third intervention that's also in which we have a program that happens after the 20-day attendance challenge. We now initiate a program for a Get Organized challenge or a Get Organized campaign where we focus on making sure students know how to organize for their classrooms, or we focus on making sure that kids are able to keep their binders together, do a little bit of time management and keep a calendar, or all of the, where we have this Get Organized campaign to make sure that Felicia knows exactly what she needs to do for her classes. So she has her binder, which has a calendar in it, which has the notes from her classes, where Felicia looks at this and it's just she's being taught how to keep herself organized. There were lessons that her teachers gave. There, again, were posters and announcements. There was that binder that was handed to her with pre-printed calendar cards in them, or there was a place in that binder for Felicia to record her own attendance. So every day she comes in and she's there during first period, she records her own attendance to show that she was there, and so she can track her own attendance. And therefore we keep that initial attendance campaign going through the Get Organized campaign. Again, just like in the other two, Felicia doesn't have a direct connection with me, the champion of that intervention. She just knows that there's this intervention. And with these three interventions that we have out there, and there are many, many more that are going on, I've created a base, a net of protection for Felicia, where she is able to operate within the school and work successfully if there's no major issue facing her. She is kept on track by the attendance, so she knows that she needs to make sure she gets to school every day through that 20-day attendance challenge. She is supported through the Caught You Doing Good campaign, where she's able to understand what behaviors are successful and what aren't, and those successful behaviors are reinforced. And the same thing with the Get Organized campaign for course performance. She knows how she's able to keep all of her work organized in a binder and is able to focus on what she needs to do. And so we have this wonderful, with Tier 1, this base of support for her. Now, let's also say that Felicia needs a little bit more than that, a little bit more than just creating a great school climate and culture. And so those Tier 1 champions have done a great job creating this safe and welcoming and successful climate and culture throughout the building. But Felicia needs a little bit more than that. She has some issues that she's dealing with that make that not enough for her. And so what we have is a way for, we have a Tier 2 intervention that we've now decided to provide Felicia. And so every day during lunch, Felicia goes and meets for a tutoring program because she's having a little trouble understanding some English concepts. And so there's a group of kids that meet every day during lunch and support each other, and the English teacher is there working with them to help them get through the issues that they're having understanding concepts. So if I'm that champion, if I'm the champion of this tutoring group, I have now a connection with Felicia that I didn't have as a Tier 1 champion. I'm meeting with her every day, but I'm meeting with her every day for a specific purpose. I'm focusing on a specific area of need that she has, that she needs support in English. And so I am working with her and building a relationship with her to provide that intervention. It's a specific goal of that relationship is the intervention itself. So that's why it's a little bit of both for case management as well as project management, because I'm providing both types of support in a Tier 2 environment. So I have that connection with her where I didn't as Tier 1, and I don't have that deep find every issue that I need to support with Felicia that I would at Tier 3, but I'm focusing on this one and building a relationship. And so Felicia also has another issue where she is part of an after-school program where she meets with the counselor as well as 5 other girls for kind of a girls group discussing girls' issues. I would have no idea what would be discussed at this type of meeting, but again, the champion that is meant to go over this, and I specifically chose an intervention that I would not be a part of to show that these types of interventions, you do need to match the right person with the right interventionist. And so I could run and I could support kids when it comes to that English tutoring program. Although I'm a social studies teacher, I do have enough knowledge and background to be able to support that basic area of reading and writing and all those types of things where I can support in that area. Where when it comes to those deeper social needs and specifically the needs that come from being a girl at the school, that is not an area that I would be the best choice for that intervention. And so when it comes to choosing a champion for these interventions, that matching process is also very important. And so Felicia now has 5 champions around her from the Tier 1 to the Tier 2 level that are supporting her in different ways. They've created a basic culture and climate that keeps her safe and is welcoming. They have supported specific areas of need that she has at school that she needed that extra support in. But again, let's just say it's not enough for Felicia, that she needs a little bit more support. There are graver and deeper issues going on that we need to provide that support to Felicia. And so that's when we move on to that Tier 3 case management, high need, deep support for Felicia. That case management, that person works with Felicia very intensely, communicating with her, building a relationship with her, finding the areas that she has of both strength and of need, and building on those and supporting those, and doing everything they can to find a way to make Felicia successful. And in many ways, it's also about connecting Felicia to these other supports. Maybe this case manager was the person that sent Felicia to the tutoring group to begin with, knew that there was this tutoring group going on, and was able to say, hey, I know that you're having trouble in English, and I know this there's this group going on. I think that this would be a great intervention for you. That case manager would need to know Felicia well enough to be able to recommend another intervention for her, to be able to know that, hey, Felicia, you have this area of need. There's this program out there that provides the support for that area of need, as well as the girls group that's going on. That case manager can connect them to those interventions that are out there, as well as the Tier 1 whole school support. There's these prizes and stuff that are being handed out for not missing any day of school, and so maybe this case manager makes sure that, hey, she made those 10 days, that first 20 days of school, so I want to make sure she gets recognized for that she's supported for being able to overcome whatever issue that was happening, to be able to get a reward for those 10 days. And so as that case manager, I'm also the person that's linking her to these other tiers. I'm connecting her to those Tier 1 supports. I'm connecting her to those Tier 2 supports, so that way I can start relying more and more on those as Felicia's greater areas of need are lessening, and I can provide a way for a soft landing back into the school. And one of the best parts about creating this wonderful series of champions, because when we talk about creating a tiered intervention system, we are talking about creating a tiered system of champions, of people that are focusing on our students' needs. And so we need to think about what that team is and being able to find places that we can connect those people to the supports that are out there. I'm sorry, connect those team members there to the students and to the interventions that they are best fitted for. With teachers, we are, as a teacher myself, we are focused on our classrooms as well as on our instruction, as well as the students that we see every day. So the best match for us when it comes to being a champion of interventions are as close as possible to our area of expertise and to our daily work. So if there's an intervention that I can champion that occurs in my classroom that is connected to the subject that I'm teaching and that directly affects the students that I see every day, I am much more likely to be excited and want to take on that initiative than if it's something that is a little bit further away from where I am. If it's an intervention that affects the school, well, okay, I'm connected to the school rather than my classroom. It's a step away. If it's connected to a subject that I'm not teaching, well, it's still connected to teaching, and so I understand the need to, even if I'm not a science teacher, I understand that kids do need to learn science, and so I do feel connected a little bit, but it's still a step away from exactly what I'm teaching. And the same thing for if I'm a 9th grade teacher and it's meant for 10th graders, it's not for the kids that I'm teaching right now, but it's for the kids that I may have taught last year as their 9th grade teachers, so I still feel a little bit of connection, but again, it's a step away from where I am exactly. So the closer you can get to me and matching me as a champion with my everyday work, then I'm definitely going to be a much better champion for that intervention. And the reason that I have this wonderful long list is because I want to make sure that we think about everybody who is in our schools. As the son of someone who used to be the cafeteria head lunch lady, I know that a lot of our kids spend 30 to 40 minutes every day in that room, and knowing that interventions can occur in that space, that we involve those people who are providing our kids with their actual sustenance for their day in their interventions. If we have students that we have a case manager who knows that a student is not able to get after school or before school food, then we want to create a partnership between those two people to support that student. Or if we want to create if we know that our school needs to have a campaign around nutrition and healthy eating, that we want to be able to include the one place where kids are sent to every day to get their nutrition and to eat. And so we want to be able to create those interventions that are best used and, again, match what the people are doing on a day-to-day basis. And so we want to, so when we talk about the people that are the supporters, we want to make sure that there's this wonderful team that is providing the support. And just like we heard earlier when it comes to that success team, when they all can sit down at a table and talk about how all of the interventions are going, how those interventions for the specific students that we're focusing on are going, then all of these people, if it's like an overview of what's going on, if it's kind of like a quarterly assessment of our interventions, then we want to make sure we invite everyone who was a champion, even if they aren't part of the regular day-to-day classroom, if they are part of that, like I said, the lunchroom, or if they are the custodians. Being a secondary teacher, I don't work that often in elementary schools, but I have been to several elementary schools, and from my own experience, the custodian or the head custodian becomes a major character at elementary schools. I remember at many of the assemblies when they're introducing the administrator versus the custodian to the kids, letting them know that these are, in elementary school, these are safe people that you don't see every day or that you won't see all the time, but these are safe people in your building. There was always a larger clap for the custodian than there was for the administrator, and that was kind of on purpose because it was part of the culture to create this safe aura around the custodian, so that way if anything happened, they knew they could go to this person on a regular basis. And so when it comes to this team of people that are doing the interventions, I can't say enough to make sure that we focus on every kind and caring adult in the building that works with our kids in some way. And I'm a little remiss on this, that I'm looking at this list and I'm not certain why I don't have the bus drivers on it. They are the people that see our kids the first thing in the morning and the last thing at the end of the day. That they are able to, that they are the first representative of our school system that they see, and the last one that they see every day if they ride the bus. And so we want to make sure, again, that if there are interventions that occur on the bus, that we involve them.
Paul, we have a question with regard to the intervention team that you're talking about. This person would like to know how many interventions should the champion be responsible for, or how many students should be assigned to a champion at one time?
Could you repeat that one more time? I want to make sure I heard it correctly.
How many interventions should the champion from your team be responsible for, or how many students should be assigned to a champion at one time?
So it's pretty much the question is about the workload that we want to give to our caring adults in the building. And again, that's part of that matching process. When it comes to, so a general guide for that, if someone is there, if a teacher is there to, and they are given 2 to 3 students to mentor on a regular basis, kind of that tier 2, tier 3, kind of somewhere in there, depending on how deeply they support that student. I would say 2 to 3 in general is a great place to start, depending on that teacher's workload. And depending on that teacher's ability to support. If they are supporting a whole school initiative, I would say that depending on the initiative, if it's a time-bound initiative that goes for only like 2 to 3 weeks, I would provide that teacher space during that 2 to 3 weeks, as well as a couple weeks planning and a couple weeks wrapping up afterwards, in which they aren't on any other intervention, they aren't championing anything else, and then giving them a space afterwards before they champion the next intervention for them. So, and if the intervention is something that happens throughout the year, for the whole year, then I would keep it down to 1 or 2 at most for interventions. But again, that is all about the workload, about the matching process between the people and the interventions and the workload of the intervention itself. So that matching process becomes very important. Which, Linda, I have to say is kind of perfect that question came in just then, because I was about to say that that gets to the end of my wonderful presentation here, and I'm ready to take questions. So you beat me to it.
So sorry for jumping the gun on that one. I should have asked you about whether it was all right to ask questions as they came in. But now
it worked out perfectly.
We're going to entertain additional questions from our participants. Paul, we don't seem to have any additional questions at this time. So maybe we should move into wrapping up. We do really appreciate the information that you were able to share, and I'm just checking again, just making sure that there aren't any. Oh, we have one more question. Can other students be a champion to their peer?
I would say yes. For being a champion, student voice is very important for trying to understand exactly what the best mix of interventions you need for a school. And so if there are interventions that a student or several students want to implement, let's say that they want to be a part of some Tier 1 intervention that they themselves champion, I would definitely encourage students to take that on. If there is a way to support themselves and each other, I would definitely encourage that. Yeah, especially since the best way to find out what students need and what's best is to ask them themselves and provide them the means of helping each other.
Well, thank you very much for those questions from our attendees, and to Paul for the helpful and informative information that he has shared. Paul, would you be able to move to, I believe there's one more slide that shows some of the upcoming resources and webinars that are going to be available in the month of November, and also provides a link to the center website, and just a heads up that we are planning for a national convening in 2018 with details to be forthcoming. I'd like to encourage everyone to stay on the site and participate in just a few quick polling questions that are related to this session. We really would appreciate your feedback, and please know that we receive the poll information anonymously, so we want to let you know that that's the case, and ask you please answer honestly to help us find ways to improve our approach and content offerings in the future. So again, we would like to thank everybody who joined us for today's webinar, ask you to participate in the polls when they come on the screen, and have an amazing day.